What's up guys, Coyote Works here. Well, today I'm off on the hunt for an old Depression era town. So I'm out here in what's called the Imperial Valley and I'm trying to track down the town of Imperial. Now you can't see anything looking out across this sagebrush today to indicate that at one time out across this valley there were a couple of hundred people living here. And I'm going to tell you guys a little bit more about this town, but right now I found my first couple of signs of buildings right back up here behind me. So I came back to the Jeep to get the camera. I'm going to go show you guys what I found. As is often the case when I'm searching for the remnants of the lost and abandoned history of the desert country, my first signs that I was getting close to the site of one of the homesteads was a few rusty tin cans and a few broken shards of Depression glass laying in the sand. So I've been wandering this flat out here, basically just walking a grid pattern back and forth. And it's freaking hot as hell, by the way. It's about 95 degrees. But I started finding little clues. I started following the clues. The rusty tin cans led me to a few barrel stays. The barrel stays led me to a pile of rocks. And just beyond that pile of rocks, I found the remains of the old stone foundation of what would be the first homestead that I would find in the Imperial Valley that day. This is probably going to be really hard for you guys to see, but I'm sitting in an old root cellar. So right here at this homestead site, there was a couple of buildings here. The main house is right over there, and then this is the root cellar. Check this thing out. So this is pretty interesting. I've got three of these piles of rock, one here, one right behind the camera, and one there. So I'm thinking maybe this was where their garden was, and they cleared the rocks away. So my plan is today is to identify the site of as many buildings as I can, and I'm going to map them all out on my GPS. So slowly over time as I explore this site, I want to figure out where all the buildings were. And I'll tell you a little later around the campfire all of what was here in this town, but it was a pretty major town. And then scattered out across this whole valley were dozens and dozens of Depression era homesteaders out here. After spending a little bit more time exploring that first homestead site, it was time to get back on my feet and back to working my grid pattern across the desert. Around 1910 to 1914, there had been literally dozens of homesteads scattered across this valley, and my goal was to find as many of them as I could that day. And within about another hour, this time, my first clue was a pile of rocks. The pile of rocks led me to some tin cans, and eventually the tin cans led me into another stone foundation that was all that remained of the second homestead that I would find for that day. Alright guys, I'm pretty excited right now. I just found the second home site out here. So here's a stovepipe to it, and I've got lots of Depression glass down here. Now this home site was burned to the ground because there's some melted glass in here, which is pretty interesting, but the ground's just littered with nails and there's a faint perimeter of a foundation here. So what I'm thinking is this homestead burned to the ground and all the nails are just settling into the earth. Alright guys, this is cool as shit. This is an old farm implement just laying here out in the middle of the desert. Alright, well I'm pretty stoked. Well, I located two homestead sites on my way into this old town. That's pretty typical for these homestead towns that were around 1900, from 1900 to 1920, is there was kind of a population center, and then scattered out around that were all these kind of rural homesteads. Everybody needed a little bit of land to be able to subsist off of, so everybody didn't live in town. The businesses were in town, and the people who ran the businesses lived in town for the most part, but everyone else lived in the surrounding area. So what I'm trying to locate right now are all the surrounding homesteads, or as many of the surrounding homesteads as I can. I think I'm onto something here. Back behind me, a chunk of metal, a couple of posts, solid posts here, so I think I'm getting close to another home site. And that was it, my third homestead of the day. And this time it was a few weathered boards that had been laying there in the sand for over 100 years that gave me a clue that I was close to the homestead site. But as they say in the desert, the shadows were getting long, which means the end of the day is coming. So it was time for me to jump back in the Jeep and start hunting for a place to camp for the night. Alright, well, I'm hot, I've been hiking all over, and there's no rest from the sun out here. There's not hardly a tree for miles, so it's getting close to 6 o'clock. So I'm going to start working my way back up towards where there's some canyons and some trees and start looking for a place to make camp for the night. I didn't get to explore as much of this area today as I wanted to. I spent a lot more time looking for the remote homesteads, so I didn't really get to explore the town site at all. So I think what I'll do is camp relatively close by, and then I can come back in the morning and do some more exploring of this area. Okay guys, we're gonna go check this out, but people ask me all the time why I carry a gun when I'm out here. And I always say there's two kinds of people that come way out here in the middle of nowhere like I do. Either really good people or really bad people. And I don't know if you guys can see this yet behind me, but I'm gonna show it to you. And I don't know what kind of tweaker shit this is, but these are the kind of people that I don't want to run into out here without a gun. There's freaking trash everywhere. I mean, who does this kind of stuff? Who comes way out here and leaves a place in this kind of condition? You know, this would be kind of cool if it wasn't for all the trash and everything that they left in here. It's actually a pretty bomb shelter. But they just left their tarps strung up out here, left trash all over the place. Look at this. Trash stuffed back in there, all kinds of beer cans. And this is just a beautiful place in here too. Yeah, there's more trash stuffed up there in the rocks. These are really cool rock formations in here. This is a place that I come every so often. Check this out. This is like a natural little fire pit in there. This is why I don't talk a lot about my locations on my videos, because I don't want to see some of these places that are pretty special and precious to me get all screwed up like this. People come out here that don't have any respect for it, leave all their shit behind out here. Oh, it's just infuriating to me. Well, I found just a beautiful little spot to camp in this canyon. Got these really cool rock formations lining the rim, and then they just get even more kind of extreme going up that way. So it's a really unique piece of terrain for out in this country. So I'm going to pop up my rooftop tent, get my camp set up, and get some dinner going. And I have a real treat for you guys for dinner tonight. This is something that almost every video I get a question about. So this is the Ready Light, and you can get it from Free Spirit Recreation. GoFSR.com is their website. And this is my light source around camp, but also my charging station for charging up my phones, camera batteries, things like that. It's really easy to set up, and I like it because once it's set up, it's nice and sturdy. the wind doesn't knock it over or anything, and it's freestanding. As you guys see, I camp in a lot of places where there's not necessarily a lot of trees or things like that to hang lights from. So it's nice that it has its own stand. So there's the stand set up, and then here's the lighting unit and battery pack. Solar panel on one side, and then the lighting unit on the other side, and then it has these detachable lights that I use up in my rooftop tent. Let's flip it on, give her a test. Nice. And last but not least, I got my Glock cooler. This thing's awesome. You can see the Glock logo right there, so you know it's an authentic Glock product. And if being a Glock cooler wasn't cool enough, I've also plastered it with an array of other Second Amendment friendly stickers. Alright, so I've got something really special here tonight. What I've got is some South Africa style mints. So this has curry, chutney, kind of a combination of flavors. It's ground beef with a really amazing combination of flavors that Minnow and I made up last night. So I've got the good fortune of having some leftovers. So here's the thing. I like bringing leftovers out with me, but I don't have a microwave with me, so I'm gonna have to improvise a little bit in how I heat these up. Now this South African style mince is delicious, and I like it over some rice. So I've got myself a little bit of rice and a little bit of mince, and what I need to do is just heat those up. So I'm going to show you guys a really tricky way of microwaving things out in the bush when you don't have an indirect heat source. So I'm going to get my stove going, put my frying pan on there, put a little water in my frying pan, then I'll take my rice and set it in there. And now I've got a steam bath or an indirect heat source to heat up my rice. While my rice is heating up, I'm going to enjoy a little dust cutter huckleberry lemonade. I'll give that rice about 5 minutes or so, and then it should be nice and warm. Now to cook my mince, I put it in one of these food bags. These are these food bags that are meant to line like a slow cooker. And I filled up my pan with water, and I'm just going to set that in the boiling water. And then I'll cook it that way. My rice is almost warmed up. Get every bit of that goodness out of there. Oh yeah, look at that. That's going to be amazing. There it is, dinner is served. South African mince over white rice. The temperature's cooling off pretty fast out here actually. It's nice to have some hot food. Well, my belly's full. I finished my dust cutter and I'm about ready to crawl up in the rooftop tent and hit it for the night. But I thought I'd tell you guys a little bit more about this town and one of the things that's so interesting to me about it. So the town of Imperial, like a lot of towns out west here, was kind of a sham, really. So in about 1912 or so, a land developer plotted out the town site and started selling lots. So he started selling lots between $10 and $500. But in order to get people to come way out in the middle of the desert and buy a little piece of land, he had to make up a bunch of stories about how amazing it was. So he put together all this propaganda talking about how there was no rocks, there was groundwater really close to the surface, and he even, to embellish things even more, he even added that there was soon going to be a railroad that was going to pass through the valley. So it was under that kind of hype that most of the people moved there. And I think around 1914 there were somewhere around 164 people or so living there, which isn't a huge amount of people, but when you think about it, for a little community, homestead community out in the middle of the desert, that's a pretty good sized population. Well, what happened is when those people got there, it had been, for a few years prior to that, there'd been above average precipitation, and they actually were able to do some farming and grow some crops. So they had a couple of pretty decent years. But then the climate turned to its normal desert climate out here, and they all found out that they really couldn't grow anything. So I think by about 1916, all but maybe 2 or 3 residents were gone. So pretty short little life, and it's a story that's common all across the West. Some land promoter cooks up a bunch of hype to sell lots, and he makes a whole bunch of money. And back in those days, with communication and distance and everything, you know, it was pretty easy for somebody like that to cash in their money. You know, say he was back in Missouri and you walked into an office in Missouri and you bought a lot and you got a deed for that lot, and then you got on a wagon train and you headed out west, and maybe 3-4 months later, maybe you made it out here to Oregon. And by that time, by the time you get there and you find out the land isn't what was promised, what are you going to do at that point? You're, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6 months journey to get back to Missouri. And by the time you get back there, it's now been a year since you'd had that transaction, and that guy's long gone. And with no internet and no quick communications, that guy just disappears with everyone's money. So it's an interesting story, but at least for a couple years, they had quite a community out here. And I'll tell you a little bit more about what was in the community tomorrow, but it's pretty impressive. But for now, I'm going to button up my camp. I'm definitely not out in bear country, but I have been seeing a bunch of cougar sign in here. Cougars don't usually come into the camp and eat food or anything, but I did see a couple of badger holes right on the other side of my Jeep, so I'll just button my food up and everything, tidy up a little bit, and then I'm going to crawl up into the rooftop tent. That's the thing about the desert. Just a few hours ago, it was in the 90s, like mid to high 90s out here. And now I would say it's probably getting down 55, somewhere right in that neighborhood. So it's cooling off. Big differential between the daytime and the nighttime temperatures out here in the high desert. Oh man, this is comfortable. Boy, there's nothing like sleeping up in a rooftop tent, man. It's just comfortable, off the ground. I don't have to worry about snakes, scorpions, anything like that. Tomorrow we got some good adventures ahead of us, so hopefully I'll be up early, break down camp, and be on the move checking out some more historic sites tomorrow. I'll see you guys in the morning. Coyote Works, out. Morning guys. Having some coffee. The sun finally hit my rooftop tent. I'm kind of down in this little bit of a canyon here, so it took a while for the sun to hit my tent. But that happened, warmed up in here a little bit, and now I'm getting ready to roll out and have some breakfast. All right, well, the breeze is starting to pick up already this morning. I'm just gonna go for a quick little walk around here before I have breakfast and break down my camp. Kind of check out and see what kind of sign I can see around here. There was a lot of Native American activity in through this area. So I'm just going to see if I find any flakes, any chips, any evidence that they were moving through this area or spending any significant amount of time in this area. It's interesting walking back along this road. So I made a big loop up along the rimrock, and then now I'm on my way back to my Jeep. But I drove in here about 7:30 or so, 7:40 or so yesterday evening, and now I'm walking down the road and I'm seeing all the tracks that are on top of my tire track. So I'm seeing deer, rabbit, field mice. At one point I saw a place where a snake crossed my track. You know, everybody thinks there's no life out here, but there's life all over out in this country. You just don't see it. Most of it's nocturnal, and in the hours that most people are up and active, most of the game is down deep in their burrows and staying cool. And this is a great example right here. This is actually a spot where a coyote was chasing a rabbit or chasing something. So I've got coyote prints here, and they go off that direction and they're dug in. But this is less than 100 yards, or approximately 100 yards from where I camped. All right, and here's an interesting one. I've got cougar tracks. So I don't know if you guys can see my Jeep behind me. If not, you will when I move. But this is 25 yards from my Jeep. Last night a cougar walked here, right underneath where I'm standing. There's another track back there behind me. Then he turned off to the left and went up into those rocks. So last night a cougar came down to check out my camp. All right, for breakfast this morning, we're gonna have something really special. This is what I like to call the Coyote Works Deluxe Breakfast, or the Coyote Works Chef Special Breakfast. So stick around, about 5 minutes, I'll have this thing whipped up. Well, I'm waiting for my breakfast to prep here. I wanted to talk to you guys just a little bit about what I'm trying to do with this town out here. My goal with this project, this will be the first time that I've ever actually taken an old homestead era town that's for the most part pretty much disappeared and tried to map out the whole thing. So ultimately my goal is I want to figure out where all the buildings were, and then eventually even figure out what each of the buildings were. So this trip I'm concentrating on home sites, but next time I'll bring my metal detector out and go deeper into the town site and actually see if I can identify what structures were what. So I've been using my Gaia GPS app to actually drop waypoints or pins at every homestead or every major piece of evidence I find of some kind of activity or structure. All right, let me show you guys this amazing breakfast creation. So I've got a biscuits and gravy meal, and I've got a scrambled eggs meal. And here's where the magic happens. I'm gonna take the two of these meals and mix them together. So there I've got a nice plate of scrambled eggs. See, here's the deal, guys. I love the biscuits and gravy. I'm not super crazy about the scrambled eggs, but the scrambled eggs have a higher protein content than the biscuits and gravy. And for my morning meal, I like a good complete breakfast. So this will kind of give me the best of both worlds. And I like my biscuits and gravy nice and thick. So I take the biscuits and gravy, I put it on top of the scrambled eggs, and then the final touch is the amazing and universal Tabasco sauce. Oh yeah, look at that. That is going to be amazing. There we go. Coyote Works Deluxe Breakfast. Boy, I tell you, breakfast doesn't get much better than this. So it's about 8 o'clock in the morning and it's already getting hot. I'm guessing the temperature is probably, the breeze keeps it a little cooler, so that makes it kind of deceiving, but I bet the temperature is already getting close to 80 degrees. So I'm gonna get my breakfast down, me get camp broke down and get on the road so I can get out there in the flat, because there's no cover out there. So I want to get out there before it gets too hot. This is back here, but there's a reason there's all these cans around. That old porcelain pan or bowl, and then over here there's, this is pretty cool. I dug it from underneath the tree, but let me show you guys. It's like the leg of a table or something. This looks like homestead site number 4, and I didn't even know there was one in this area, but I've got stove pipe, stove jack, broken glass, cans, broken porcelain, see some boards over there. I'm going to investigate around here, but somewhere right around here there's going to be the site of another homestead. So I'm going to mark this down on my GPS as homestead site number 4, and I'm still working my way back towards that Imperial Valley. All right, I found a little treasure. Let me show you guys this. All right, let me see if I can show you guys this. Pretty nice obsidian point. The base is broken off, but not a lot of it. Pretty cool. I'll put that guy right back there. Leave it for the next guy. Definitely the site of an old homestead here. So another one to mark on the map. See that old stove right there? And this was actually a pretty sizable one. There was a barn and everything here. You can see all of the debris and trash. I'm actually sitting right in the footprint of the homestead right now, but I'm pretty stoked about this because this is the homestead site farthest east that I found. Well, as disappointing as it is, I'm back on the pavement and on my way home. So that was a pretty awesome trip. I didn't ever get a chance to get back to the actual town site of Imperial, mainly because the loop that I was going to get back there, the road actually didn't go through. So I identified 5 of the home sites out there. I got those all mapped out, as well as a couple other interesting things. But I'm pretty stoked. I got a good chunk of that whole valley mapped out as far as where the activity was. And now I think I'm going to get a cheeseburger on my way back into town. I'm starving and looking forward to some food that I don't have to cook myself. Cheers, guys. Thanks for coming along on this adventure. As always, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you on the next one. Coyote Works out.